Up. Okay, great. Hi, everybody. I'm just tickled to death to be with you today. My name is Rhonda Hamborski, and I'm a volunteer with the Wayne State University Institute of Gerontology. How I got connected with them is I started doing my master's work at Wayne State about 5 years ago, and I was taking a master's in communications at night. I still work during the day as an engineer, and I took a health communications class and I had a lightning bolt moment. And that lightning bolt moment was when we started talking about aging and our brains and Alzheimer's and dementia. And I said, I'm in the wrong program. I want to study this more. So I shifted from communications to gerontology, and I completed a master's in gerontology in 3 years, working full-time and going to school part-time. I studied Alzheimer's and dementia in particular. I met the folks at the Institute of Gerontology at a couple of events. I sat down with them. I took all the training that they offered for this curriculum. It's called BrainStorm. And what we're doing is called Brain Neurobics, just like brain aerobics, only brain neurobics for neurology. So I've been able to deliver this program for them at a couple of different locations around the Metro Detroit area. And as I said, I'm just so tickled to be with you today. This is a subject that's near and dear to my heart. I was my stepdad's care coordinator and care provider much of the time, and he passed away a little less than a year ago with dementia. So I've got a lived experience along with the education, and I'll tell you, the education was wonderful, but there were things that were so tricky about dementia that I didn't even see them as they were happening until sort of in the rearview mirror, and I could process them and think about them and think that was the dementia that created that behavior. So what we want to do is keep our brains healthy, happy, and exercised. And the brain needs exercise just like any other muscle in the body, just like the heart does. So what I'm going to do is start sharing slides. So my face is going to go away for a little bit, but we're going to go in and out of the slide deck because we are going to do a couple of exercises together. So let me share my screen. Give me just a second, and I will get my slide deck up. I am like Marianne. I have too many things opened on my desktop here. Let's try that a little bit differently. Let me close a couple things. I apologize. I've got a little bit of busyness going on here on my desktop. So let's share and let's go to, here we are. Okay, now you should be able to, let me put that in a different mode here for us, a full slideshow mode. Can you see that? Just a head nod? Yeah, great. Okay, great. So I know potentially a few of you were with us during lesson 1. I wasn't able to teach that one. One of my colleagues over at Wayne State taught that. And in lesson 1, we talked a little bit about some brain basics. So I thought maybe what we could do is answer some of these questions for everybody and give them the benefit of some of the takeaways from lesson 1 in case you weren't able to attend lesson 1. So one of the takeaways from Brain Basics was, what percentage of all our oxygen does the brain require? And the answer is 20%. So if you think about that, you know, the brain needs 20% of the heart's function, of our cardiovascular function. So if our heart's not healthy, and if our heart health is compromised, then you can extrapolate and say, gosh, my brain may not be getting as much blood circulation, as high a blood oxygenation level as it needs. So it's really key for us to stay exercising and stay active and keep that cardiovascular health as high as we can, because the brain is relying on that. You probably remember from middle school and maybe high school biology what a brain cell is called, and it's a neuron, right? And what does it look like? And the answer is it looks kind of like a plant root. If you think about your hand, right, I always like to say, this is a brain cell, and if you remember, this is the axon, and these are the dendrites, right? The fingers. Think about them as the root-like projections. Those are the dendrites. And just very quickly, what happens in an Alzheimer's brain is this part, this axon part, gets overtaken by bad proteins, and it actually smothers it, and it dies. And then these dendrites they get tangled. These are called by tau, and they become tau tangles. And so those connections, those electrical connections that they make otherwise get broken. And so this is physiologically what happens with Alzheimer's in the brain. So, you know, again, this is why it's so important for us to focus on our brain health. Let's see, how does it work with other cells? So anytime, you know, the brain cells don't touch any other cells. They send their information through electrical impulses. And in fact, those impulses form those connections in our brain matter and in our brain material. And let's talk a little bit about a brain neurobic activity. If you did attend in the last session, you might have tried a few of them. That's anything you do that changes your routine up. So as simple as change how you drive to the grocery store or the post office. Take a different route, because our brain is so able to adapt and automatically program. And so that becomes cemented in memory, that easy route to the grocery store. I'm sure you can get, if you do go, you can get in your car, drive there without even thinking about it. So instead, take a different route. It makes your brain exercise, and it makes connections form that aren't going to form otherwise. And then lastly, what makes up 60% of the brain? The answer is fat. And so diets that are good in protein and have a healthy amount of fat in them are really good for the brain. Diets that are high in sugar are really bad for the brain. So simple carbohydrates, cookies, cakes, all the things I love very much, especially after dinner, those are really bad for us. And they need to be treats and need to be limited in our diet, because they do damage us. And if we end up with type 2 diabetes as a result of a sugar imbalance, we're really going to have a negative impact in our brain. So what is brain neurobics? And we just said briefly, we talked about that different route if you're walking or driving. Try this at home. This is really difficult. I'm a lefty. I'm holding my pen here in my left hand, but try brushing your teeth with your non-dominant hand. So here's my right hand. Imagine this is a toothbrush. It doesn't even feel natural to me to be holding this in the wrong hand and trying to be as efficient. I've done it, and I end up with toothpaste falling out of my mouth and splattered all over my face. So it's difficult. And if you're in the kitchen, you can do something as simple as stirring the pot or using the spatula with your non-dominant hand. As funny or awkward as that might feel to you, I want you to remember that when you do it, you're building new brain connections. You're exercising your gray matter, and those new electrical impulses are charging, and they'll create cross connects across those two hemispheres of your brain. It sounds so simple, it sounds unlikely, but it's the truth. It's science, and it really, really works. Another difficult thing is to button or unbutton with your non-dominant hand. It just feels really foreign and fumbly, like I can't get that button in that slot no matter how hard I try. So that's another thing, that you can try in terms of exercising with your non-dominant hand. So we're going to take a moment and have a little exercise here. Hopefully you all have a piece of paper nearby, and I'd love for us to have our camera trained on one or two of you who do. The challenge here is now to fold a paper airplane using only that one hand, that non-dominant hand. So I'm going to give us probably a 2-minute time here. I'll take a look here at my little cell phone timer, and let's see what we can come up with in 2 minutes in terms of trying to fold an airplane. And while we're kind of in this transition exercise or pause exercise, if there are any questions that you'd like to ask via the chat, just send them right on in, and then Mary Ann will help me and we'll facilitate those as well. All right, I started a 2-minute timer, and we'll see how everybody does. Now, I remember, of course, making paper airplanes as a kid. I don't know that I was ever particularly great at it. I think my brothers were much better at it than I was. That's probably just the conditioning that we got at the time. It also could be that my left-handedness made it tough for me to imagine or replicate what they were doing. I always remember folding the two corners in, right to a point. Of course, you got to do this with only one hand. So you got to lay it flat and on the table and try to make those folds. and then you do another fold down the center, and then hopefully you have a couple of wings that pop out like an airplane. Hopefully your paper starts to resemble an airplane. And if anybody would like to hold theirs up and show it to us, we'd love to see it too. We got a minute left. Oh, hey, Marianne, that looked pretty good. Did it fly? Let's see, let's unmute you for a second. Oh, Nicole, that looks great. Do we have any other volunteers? Oh, I see Paul's plane. That looks wonderful. Let's see, it looks like I skipped over another one there. Teresa's holding hers up. Beth, that looks really good. Diane, your plane looks kind of like mine. that makes us simpatico. So
Now look at Marie. Marie, where's the point of your airplane? All right, good job, everybody.
Yeah, good job. Great job, everybody. And you know, you experience that that's difficult, right? That's kind of tough to do, to only work with the one hand, and feels a little bit awkward at the same time. Let me pause for just a minute and take a look at whether we have any questions. Looks like in the chat. Let me take a quick look. How do you heal from brain trauma? That's a tough one. In fact, I'm helping a family member with this right now. My aunt, some of you were on early and heard us talking about left-handed folks. My mother's sister, my aunt, is left-handed, and she has just gone home yesterday after having 2 back-to-back strokes and ending up in the hospital. And so my cousin, who is my age, is taking care of her and has moved up from Texas to stay with her for several weeks and help her recoup and recover. And we were chatting last night on IM about what, you know, what we could do to help her with this brain trauma and healing from a stroke. And I told my cousin, number one, get a neurologist. She needs a specialist. She should be seen by more than her regular primary care physician, because neurologists really understand brain trauma and might do some additional scans beyond what was done in the hospital. So that's number one. Number two, make sure she gets a lot of sleep. The brain repairs itself and cleanses itself when we're asleep. And it does this when we're in REM sleep, rapid eye movement sleep. So don't know if any of you have sleep difficulties. If you do, I encourage you to try to figure out what's at the root cause of those and get whatever help you can get with them. I wear a little ring device here. I don't know if you can see me. There, yeah, you can. So right here on my hand, I have a ring device, and it's spelled O-U-R-A, Aura. And it has sensors in it, electronic sensors. I wear it 7x24. It's also waterproof, so I can wash dishes or stick my hands in water, what have you. And in the morning, I get a sleep report from it. And it shows me exactly how much time I spent in REM sleep, how much time I spent in light sleep, and how much time I spent in deep sleep. And it graphically shows me the bouncing around that I do during the night from these sleep stages. So in REM sleep, this is when the brain cleanses itself and it repairs itself. And it actually looks like a dishwasher. It looks like the brain contracts during REM, and a lot of fluid, spinal fluid, washes the brain, and then it expands again during REM. REM is also when the images and memories and experiences of the day cement themselves. So the hippocampus, which is deep in the center of our brain, is our memory librarian, and the only shot it has at cementing memories is during REM sleep. So bottom line for any brain trauma, making sure that the person who's recovering gets a lot of sleep is really important. Oh, Paula, you said your plane crashed and burned. I thought it looked pretty good, actually. And then where are sources to follow the residual effects of COVID-19? I'll tell you, I don't have the answer to that one. Maybe, Marianne, we could take that one away and potentially find some links that would be helpful to everyone.
Yeah, we're actually on Thursday. Next Thursday, we have Dr. Chosky from Ascension Providence Hospital, and he's going to be talking about COVID-19 in the heart. So I think we could ask him about that and how it's affecting the brain, and maybe we can get another physician that can talk specifically about that effect in September or even in August. I'll work on it for you.
Yeah, that sounds great. Thank you. Thank you. So, all right, let's see here. There we go. So really, there's a gentleman named Dr. Lawrence C. Katz, who's a professor of neurobiology at Duke University. And he has devoted a lot of his research time into the study of our senses, all of our senses and how they affect our brain architecture and function. And he's really focused on something called neurogenesis. And that's that creation of new neurons and circuits or connections between neurons. So he's used a lot of study of MRI to chart the stimulation of areas of the brain that create neurons. Another term for this is that the brain is plastic. It has a high degree of plasticity. So even if there's insult or injury to a particular region of the brain, the other regions will try very hard to come to the assistance of that damaged region. They'll try to form new connections. They'll try to grow new neurons. They'll try to accommodate that injury and restore that function as best as possible. Sometimes the actual physiology of a stroke kills the tissue. So if that happens, that tissue and the functions that were in that tissue, very, very difficult to recover those. My younger brother, he's 9 years younger than I am. This vascular health is a huge family DNA issue. He had a massive stroke about 1.5 years ago at the age of 52, and he came to fatherhood very late in life. He has an 8-year-old and a 3-year-old. So you can imagine, how tough this has been for him. The region of his brain that was impacted by the stroke was so deep in the brain that it killed tissue and that it's not going to restore. So his whole right side, he only has about 10 minutes use of it in any given day, and then it's just a complete dead weight to him. His arm, his leg, the right facial muscles are paralyzed, and there's very little that can be done for him. So it's a really tough and sad situation. But other than those extreme sort of carve out examples like that, the brain will always try to accommodate and form new circuits and come to the aid of that damaged tissue by working around it and by establishing new connections around it. So let's take a look at what we have on the screen here right now. It isn't Greek, I'll answer that question, but I'd love for a volunteer to tell me if you could read this aloud and if you found it easy or difficult to do so. Do we have anybody who would be able to do that?
Sure.
Go ahead.
The brain loves novelty and surprise. Shake up your brain by doing routine things in new ways. Read a book. Ooh, that one's a hard word.
Uh-huh.
UQS.
UP.
Upside down.
Upside.
Yep.
Thank you.
Read a book upside down, right? That doesn't sound like reading for pleasure to me. That sounds like reading for work. But I'm not sure I could read a book upside down. I'd worry about getting a headache in the process of trying to do it, but I ought to try to do a few pages sometime and see how it feels. But I don't know about you all, but this was pretty recognizable for me to read these backwards letters. And one of the things that we suggest is another exercise that you can do at home to help you with sort of this brain exercise is to do mirror writing, so that you can take a big sheet of paper if you have a small mirror, 8 by 10, something like that, about the size of a small picture frame, write on that sheet of paper and then hold it up to the mirror and look at it in reverse and look at reading it in reverse. Also, just writing sentences in reverse, just the way you see them here, is a really good exercise for the brain, because you see what we wanted to do in translating those last two words upside down. We wanted to make that P a Q, because that was what was very familiar. So the fact that we didn't, and that we had to process it as a backwards P, meant that we have a tiny baby new connection that's sprouting in the brain right now by reading a sentence like this. So if you ever want to do any exercises like this, just sit and write a few sentences backwards this way and see how it feels for you. So we stimulate the brain through visuals, right? And a Where's Waldo puzzle is a great visual for brain stimulation. In some cases, it can be overstimulation. It can just be too much input coming at us. And especially as we're aging, looking at things like this tend to become more difficult and more complicated for us to process. In my notes, I see Waldo on the slide, but I only just now saw him when my eyes drifted to the slide. I was looking at it earlier today to get ready, and I was like, I still don't see Waldo in here, but now I do see him. Does anybody else see him by any chance? He has a little striped shirt or suit on and a little red and white striped hat, and he's near the bottom, closer to the middle. He's probably up, well, from my screen, he's up a couple of inches. I'm not sure how the size is presenting on your screens, but there's a gentleman in red pants and a white shirt near him, and a lady with a blue sweater and a yellow skirt near him as well. But he's hard to spot. He's hard to spot. So this is called visual discrimination, when we have to sort through a very cluttered or busy image like this to find something. And so it's always good for us to be aware of our surroundings. One of the things I tried to teach my children was to do something I call visual scanning, wherever they are, whatever scenario or situation they're in. A new city, maybe they're walking into a crowded area or a park. I've always tried to coach them. I want you to visually scan everything that you see left to right, and then do it again, because your brain is going to register if something looks wrong. And if something looks wrong, it probably is wrong, and it might not be a place you should be. So I've tried to do that my whole life. I've tried to impart that to my children. I think one picked it up really well. That's my also left-handed son. He's very much an observer and a visual guy. My right-handed daughter is an artist, so she's also very, very visual, but she tends to not like her mom suggesting what she should do or how she should do it. So there's that. So let's go to the next slide and take a look at some visual discrimination on something that might be a little bit easier to parse and sort and filter. There are differences between the two pictures here. Could we take a minute or two and see if we can call out a few of them from anybody who's looking at the screen?
Clock time is different.
Yep, the clock time is different. Mm-hmm.
Blue bowl seems to be replaced by two figures on the cupboard.
The knobs on the cupboard door.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Yep.
There are two bananas in one picture, three in another.
Wow, you guys are on it.
He's got
One
a
of
pin
the
in his
cookies
head.
is yellow.
One in her hair and one and not in the other.
Head.
Yeah, yeah. Cookies, yep.
The cookies.
Cat has something on its left side that's different.
Yeah, his lollipop. Mm-hmm.
And the little boy's foot, and then the other one, he has a sock.
That's a sock. Yeah, that's absolutely great.
The man
That's
seems to
not-
have a hat pin in his head.
Yeah, that's Grandma. Grandma has a hat pin or a bun pin, maybe, holding up her hair.
But too.
In the cupboard, there's in the center of the center shelf, there's
Yep.
a bowl, and then two little figures on the right.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Did somebody,
Grandma's shirt is different.
did somebody see the yellow cookie?
Yeah, the
Yep,
child
we
has
did
a
call
sock
out
on
the yellow
his
cookie.
left
Yep.
foot.
The bow tie.
Bow tie, yeah.
Yeah.
Grandma's blouse, we got that.
The
I
What
picture,
think
about
we,
the bananas? The banana count is different.
yeah, we got that earlier too. So we got everything on my cheat sheet and 2 or 3 more. So
The
great
frosting
job.
on the bottom layer is different.
It is shaped different. And
And
then there was one other thing I saw, it's very minor. The little green framed picture of the green
yeah.
hills is
Yeah.
different between
Right.
the two, isn't it? Yeah.
there's
But
a
very,
green,
Cupcake?
there's a green blob on the right-hand side that's different. Just on the, oh, is that an ice cream cone or something?
yeah, I think it's a cupcake with something on it. So yeah, there you go. So excellent, great feedback. You guys are great visual discriminators. This is also a good exercise, right? Because you focus and you have to look from thing to thing, and you can do that visual scanning, and sometimes things will jump out, but more often you have to really concentrate, look at 2 photos side by side like this. I've often seen these in magazines where they've been more difficult than this one. Has anybody else had that experience where you've looked at them and then you got maybe 3 or 4 and you go to the answer sheet and there were 8 or 9?
Right, yeah.
I'll volunteer, that's happened to me. So, so
Like
it's fun.
over the cat's ears, the one on the right is different. Got a smiley face on the plate just above the cat's ear.
Oh, got it. Yep, I see it on the plates. Yeah, perfect. Another great detail. All right, thank you. Thanks for participating in that. So we need visual discrimination. We need good visual discrimination skills. We need it when we're reading material and we're spotting for or studying for particular terms or attributes that we want to go through. We need it to read people in social situations. We need that ability to read expressions and differences in expressions, pick up on positive vibes and energy, pick up on negative, right? Be able to see maybe through body language, through a tenseness around the mouth in the expression, and pick those cues up from people. We just need it to navigate through our environment, like finding a product on a grocery shelf. I always tease my husband because he'll go stand in front of the refrigerator, open the door and say, "Where's the butter?" Or "Where's the, you name it," right? And I'll say, "It's right there on the second shelf on the right." I don't see it. I'll say, "Honey, seriously, it's going to bite your hand." And then I'll come over and I'll say, "Okay, see it right there? It's in the tub and it says butter." And he's like, "Man, I just didn't see that." So I don't think he has as good a visual discrimination ability. He's an architect, and so he studies intricate drawings. He creates intricate drawings, but to just go look at a big field of things, he seems to not have as strong a skill set in terms of picking things out. And I'm not picking on him just because he's my husband either. I promise you, he's a wonderful man, and I love him dearly. What are some ideas or nominations of daily activities that we do that we need to put those visual discrimination skills into play to do? What would be an example?
Driving a car.
Yeah, that's the prime example. That's the number one example, driving, right? Because the brain has to see and process all these objects, and it has to do it quickly. If you're on the expressway or the interstate, you're processing traffic on both sides of you. You're processing signs on overpasses. You might be spotting for a particular exit number. You might also be spotting those little signs that stick up with those exit numbers. So your brain is processing and sifting a lot of material and has to discriminate for the important material out of the unimportant material. You see a car next to you starting to steer in your direction, you have to figure out what to do about that, right? Either hope they're going to recover, look to your right really fast and see if you can steer out of their way, and you have to process that at lightning speed when doing that. You have to read for pedestrians, other hazards that might be on the road while you're driving. And it's really important that we minimize the distractions, and hence so much attention around distracted driving and around the dangers of our smartphones and what they distract us with while we are driving. So So also just think about when you're walking around your home, all of the objects that you might encounter walking down a hallway or when you walk into a room, and think about how your brain might interpret those as you're sort of walking by and you're on this, I call it autonomous sort of function with the brain, right? You're not necessarily looking for something, but you're walking by and all of these images are going, you know, into your brain by spotting them as you walk by. And we also have to use visual discrimination when we're walking, right? We have to keep an eye on the pathway below us, be it a sidewalk, be it the grass, be it our homes. So we have to keep an eye out for hazards there, for, you know, unexpected things. If we're walking outside in a park or in the grass, I like to hike and I use sticks when I hike, hiking sticks. The one main, besides the fact that they take pressure off my knees when I'm going up and down, the other thing they do is make noise, because I'm not a big snake fan, and I hike in places that have snakes, depending on the time of year. So I always like to use my sticks on the rocks that I come in contact with to create noise, so that if there's a snake anywhere close to thinking about crossing my path, he or she is going to dart back in their hidey hole and leave me alone while I enjoy my hike. I have come across them probably 2 or 3 times, but in a way that, you know, was not dangerous. So I do feel like the sticks actually help me with that. They at least make me feel better about it. So that's another example. So we're going to do 2 different exercises here. One for folks who have Play-Doh and one for folks who do not. So let me start with the folks who do not have Play-Doh first. Hopefully you have a sheet of paper and a marker. And I'm going to just skip forward to one slide right now. And once I say start, what I'm going to ask you to do is use your non-dominant hand and draw a flower for us in the time that we're going to give the Play-Doh folks time to sculpt. So you can draw any kind of flower you like. The only rule is it has to be done entirely with your non-dominant hand. It can be as intricate as you'd like to make it or as simple as you'd like to make it. And it probably depends on your comfort level with your non-dominant hand. So that's the paper and marker exercise. And we'll put a timer on it, probably a 2 to 3 minute timer. Any questions on that before I move to the sculpting Play-Doh exercise? Okay, so for those who have Play-Doh, yay, go ahead and you can take your Play-Doh out of your container. Let's get you all set up before we start our timer. And I'm going to show you a little animal that I'm going to ask you to try to sculpt. And I'm got a brand new container of Play-Doh and it's in there, but here it is. Here's mine, it's out. I'm right-handed, so I'm going to have to try to do this with my right hand. So here's my little animal. Hopefully you can see it without too much glare. It's a little pig. It's just a little guy. One of my children made this back in elementary school. And it's just got, he's got 4 little legs on the bottom. He's got a little tail. He does have little ears sticking up here. He's got a snout. His snout does have a couple of depressions in it for his little nose holes. Really depends on how intricate you think you can get in 2 or 3 minutes. And he's got a couple of depressions for where his eyes would be. So it's just a little guy. You've got, you know, this little piece of Play-Doh here. And not that this is a race or a contest or anything, it really isn't. It's really just to grab the experience of doing this. I think I'm gonna do, Marianne, what do you think? You think 3 minutes is a good amount of time for this?
I don't think any amount of time is enough for me, but I say let's try 3 minutes.
Okay, let's try 3 minutes. So if you're working with your Play-Doh, put it in your non-dominant hand. If you're drawing the flower, make sure you're doing that with your non-dominant hand. And I've just started my timer. And so we'll go 3 minutes here. And I'll also see if I can make a piggy with one hand here. I think this is going to be a little tough. I'm an engineer by day, so you would think I would think about the best way from an engineering perspective to process this. But we'll see. Oh, and how hard is that temptation to reach up with your other hand and just pinch that little piece of Play-Doh a different way, huh? How tough is that? Very quiet group. I can tell everyone's concentrating hard. Making a curly tail on a little piggy is a little bit of a challenge here too. I'm loving that Play-Doh smell. Okay, I'll give us a count of how much more time we have. We have a little under a minute left. We have 50 seconds left. I'm going to stop with where I got to on mine. I'm actually surprisingly satisfied with it. So we can share some views of what everybody's come up with here in just a few more seconds.
All right, Rhonda.
So should I stop share so we can see everybody's screens?
Yeah.
Okay, let's do a stop share and get ready to look at what everybody's done. I'll go ahead and show you. So here was my, sorry for any light glare. Here was our little animal, our little pig, right? And
Oh,
here,
Cindy Sherman, that one looks really good.
ooh,
Look at how
great.
much fatter mine is than hers.
That's called self-praising, Marianne.
Those are great.
Good job, Kathy.
Yeah,
Oh,
good
wow.
job,
Look
everybody.
at Marie Palmer's flower. Oh my gosh, Hansa, you're an artist.
Wow.
Linda Bree,
Yeah.
that looks really good.
Let's see.
I tried to draw it with my left hand.
Wow.
Look,
Oh, good.
there's some.
Oh, look at that. That's great. Look at Meg's. Oh my God.
Wow.
That's
Yeah.
beautiful.
Great work.
Those flowers.
Really great work. I'm trying
Oh,
to scan
Judith,
across.
yours is so good. Everybody did a great job.
Oh, what
That's
these are
wonderful.
I know. I was pretty
Yes.
proud of mine until I saw Cindy's.
Did
Let me
you
see yours
find?
again, Marianne.
Can you see it?
All
Isn't
right,
he cute? All right, this is what I think of that. Match it. All right.
Okay, so let's see. Let me resume where we were here and resume our slideshow. Okay. Let's talk for a little bit about how you found this exercise. Did you find yourself concentrating, really focusing? How did it feel to you when you were doing this?
I have actually done this before, but not for drawing, for writing a letter. And I think I'm ambidextrous because my mother was, so I can pretty well control my left hand. But some of the other flowers are really beautiful. Thanks. I liked it. It was very calming. Thank you.
It was calming, wasn't it? I found it calming too. I found myself kind of in a Zen zone. For lack of a better way to describe it, where I was focusing very much on my animal and not feeling stressed about it and not feeling uber distracted either. I was feeling very focused and calm about it. How about somebody else?
I felt good about it, but I felt like a child, like I wasn't coordinated well enough to make a straight line. My line seemed to be a little wiggly. And then I didn't have a black or a green marker, so I used a pen. And of course, with a pen being fine, I was trying to fill in the stem. And of course, instead of going up and down, my hand was going in all directions. So it was like lack of coordination.
So
It was like back to first grade.
yeah,
Yes,
an activity that you didn't have mastery of, huh?
yes.
Yeah, yeah. All right, well, thank you, everybody, for playing. We do need to play a little bit more as grown-ups. We don't often get the chance to, so if you did get the Play-Doh, enjoy your Play-Doh and play with it some more. And think about the relaxation that that might offer you. Let's go ahead and move through some more of the material. So Categories is a good imagination game. It's something that's intergenerational, right? It's ageless, it's challenging, and it's changing all the time. So it's a great tool for the brain. It plays on the use of categories to remember. And if you have grandchildren, it's a fun, ageless game, as I said. I'm part of a brain study at University of Michigan, Ann Arbor, where I go in once a year. My daughter goes in as my observant partner, and they separate us and they ask us questions. Her job is to observe anything changing in my behavior, you know, any examples of memory challenges or anything like that. And then they put me through a number of brain examinations, memory examinations. It's about a 5 or 6 hour day, and it's exhausting. But they also, every other year, do an MRI on my brain. And so if there are any changes that show up in that MRI, they will notify me and refer me to a neurologist. So I was eager to volunteer for this because I'm not particularly worried about dementia. Although we have so many vascular issues in my family that the dementia that I would be likely to get would be vascular based, potentially, instead of Alzheimer's based. So I have to really watch out for my blood pressure and my heart health and all that, that wraps up around that. But the point of this is some of the games are very much categoric games, so, or tests rather, the memory tests. So one example would be the student who's examining me. They use student masters and doctoral students to do this work. So the student who's examining me might read off 20 words, and then I have to repeat back as many as I can remember to them. And I realized right away that the words they were reading off had categorical affiliations. So there were words like opal, diamond, pearl. There were words like tent, house, camper. There were words like elephant, rhino, tiger. So those are all categories, right? So you have precious gems, you have something that you would live in or stay in, and then you have big animals. But they don't read them out that way. They read them out all mixed up. And so what I figured out very quickly was, boy, I better categorize these because that's the only shot I have at remembering them, right? To try to remember them randomly the way they read them out to me wasn't going to work. So my brain wanted to sort them into those categories. And it was really interesting. I never got all 20. They do this exercise. They repeat it about 3 times through the day. I just couldn't retain that many. But once I landed on this category approach, I did a lot better than just by trying to remember them in the sequence they read them out to me. So let's play a little category game or scategory game here. And I'm going to choose the letter C, C as in capital. And let's get some audience participation here. Let's toss out some things that go well with chocolate that start with the letter C.
Chocolate.
Chocolate goes well with chocolate.
Candy.
Strawberries.
Coffee.
Well, now strawberry starts with an S.
Cocoa.
Oh, what C you want? Okay, sorry.
Cranberry.
Yeah, let's start a word with the letter C. A word with
Cherry.
the letter C.
Coffee.
Coffee goes well with
Cookie.
chocolate. Cookie. Awesome.
Champagne.
Champagne.
Oh,
yeah.
yeah.
And
Cherries.
inside that chocolate is a strawberry. That would be perfect.
Cherries.
Yeah.
Cherries, yeah.
Caramel. Caramel. Yeah.
Caramel. Oh, perfect.
Coconut. Ooh, yeah, I
Perfect.
like coconut.
I like coconut too.
Cranberries.
Yeah.
Oh.
Let's skip to another one. Let's change up our letter as well. Let's use the letter M, and let's go to number 3, things you eat with a spoon. Starting with the letter M.
Milk.
Mashed potatoes.
Yeah.
Molasses.
Molasses. Mm-hmm.
Mushroom soup.
Oh,
Mushroom soup. Mm-hmm.
macaroni and cheese.
Mac and cheese. Love it.
I don't know. That's a hard
Mexican soup.
Yeah. Good. Good.
Mastacholi.
Mastacholi. Yeah, this one was a little tougher. Minestrone.
Muffaletta sandwiches when they
I don't
When the
think I'd eat
forks-
a sandwich.
When the
with
forks are
food.
dirty, you use the spoon on the muffaletta. Okay, let's go to the last one, number 6. Let's use the letter S as in Sam, and let's toss out things that are in fairy tales that start with S.
White shoes.
With an S. Yes, stone.
Lawn.
Stars.
Stars.
Mm-hmm.
Saint.
No.
Sunsets.
Sunsets.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Snakes.
Oh,
Snakes.
yeah.
Swords.
Shoes.
Soldiers.
Soldiers, yeah.
Soldiers.
No.
Yeah.
Stepsisters.
Yeah.
Oh, good one. Good
Bells.
one.
Singing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sorcerers.
Yeah.
Sorcerer.
That's excellent. So think about this as a game you could play with your grandchildren, and a fun one, right? That they would be energized around playing with you as well, and it does make your brain work. So now everyone who is able to, I'm going to ask you to stand up. I'm going to adjust my camera so that when I stand up, you're not looking at my tummy. So here I am, and I'm sure many of us remember how to play Simon Says, right? So let's call a couple of the commands. So what we're going to do is just do normal Simon Says. So go ahead and step to your right. You should look backwards on the camera, right? Step to your left. Step forward. Step backward. And now we're going to switch it up. So when I say step to your right, you're actually going to go to your left.
Don't you have to say Simon Says first?
What's that?
You have to say Simon Says first, or are we just doing it without that?
We're just gonna
Okay.
do it without Simon Says.
Yeah, you are freaking me out.
Okay. So when I say right, you have to do it with your left, and when I say forward, you have to do it with your backward. Everybody got that? You got to do the opposite. And I'm not just going to say step. I'm going to say some other things. So touch your left shoulder. Did you touch your right shoulder?
Yes.
That's what. Okay, good. Good job. Move right. Did you move left?
Yes.
Okay. This might be too easy for you guys. Lean forward. Did you lean backward?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Haven't tripped anybody up yet, it sounds like. Step right. Step left again. Touch your left ear. Did you touch your right ear?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, fine. I'm just going to sit down then. So you guys just have this. You just have this down. So you're either really good at spatially changing this around in your brain, or you knew something was coming. You knew it was a trick.
You know what's funny, Rhonda, though? When you would say left, although I touched or did the opposite of left, I used my left hand.
Mm.
Oh. That interesting just now.
That's interesting. That's an interesting observation. Now, you could also do this with grandchildren, and you could observe them too, right? And see if, when you say, if you coach them on doing it backwards and say, step right, see if they step left, but, use the right leg or something as the dominant move that they're going to make. Pardon me. Got a little bit of a dry throat here. So we are closing out our session today, and I want to do a little bit of summary work with you here. and talk a little bit about the review of brain neurobics and the reason that we focused on this as a chapter in BrainStorm, the curriculum. So these challenging activities break us out of our ruts because our brains do establish this autonomous ability. You know, as you're driving to the grocery store, as you're brushing your teeth, as you're doing the things that you do automatically and repetitively, the brain cements those and locks those in. They become autonomous. Brain doesn't even have to think about doing them. But that doesn't build any new brain cells or any new connections. So that's why we do this mix up and try these different things, because we want to stimulate the brain, make new cells, make new connections. Some of these were things that were fun and maybe took us out of whatever moment we're in life right now and helped us alleviate a little stress. I hope they did. Remember, we talked about sleep earlier and about how important getting a good deep sleep is, and how important the REM phase of sleep is. You won't get REM altogether. It will spike in and out throughout the course of the night. What you need to get as a total is around an hour and a half, maybe up to 2 hours worth of REM sleep. And I know as we age, it becomes more difficult to sleep. For me personally, I've become very, very light sensitive. My husband teases me about it, but seriously, if we're traveling and we're in a hotel room and there's light bleeding in under the room door or across the top of the curtains, I have to go stuff towels in those spaces because I cannot sleep. It bothers me so much. He's bought me a really nice eye shade that has room for your eyelashes in it so that you can blink your eyes without scraping the shade. But it feels funny because it's on my head with an elastic strap, so it doesn't feel right to me. So then that impedes my ability to fall asleep. So we kind of have to, you know, understand that we have these challenges as we're aging. We also just don't sleep as long as we used to. I generally do run about 8 hours a night. I know if I sleep naturally, that's about how much sleep my body says it needs. I know my 86-year-old father only sleeps about 5, maybe 6. So he couldn't sleep 8 if you gave it to him every night. He just doesn't sleep that long anymore. So it's really important to look at how you're sleeping and if there are any changes you need to make to improve and enhance your sleep. Put your devices down, get off of them at least a half an hour before you go to bed. And I just heard a statistic on a study yesterday that if you read for 6 minutes before you try to fall asleep, that the activity of reading, not from an electronic screen, from a paper book, or a newspaper or a magazine, the activity of reading puts your brain in that relaxation state, and it helps prepare you to sleep better. So I'm going to try that as well. I do read sometimes before bed, and I find that I get really sleepy and then just frustrated that I couldn't stay awake long enough to remember my reading, and I have to reread it the next day, but that's okay if it helped me go to sleep, right? Your brain needs time, you know, to organize all the events and the information of the day. And that's another reason why that sleep is so important, and that REM sleep. Because as I said, that hippocampus, the librarian of our memories, the file cabinet of our memories, when it's disrupted, then you have memory problems. You are not cementing those memories. They see in soldiers who've returned from deployments, they see evidence of shrinkage of the hippocampus, just like shrinkage occurs with Alzheimer's disease. So that stress, the PTSD, incents that same protein, that same bad protein that happens in the Alzheimer's brain to activate in the soldier's brain. And the very first organ or chamber of the brain to be impacted by Alzheimer's is that hippocampus. It shrinks in size. And so then it starts malfunctioning. And that's where memory issues begin to go awry, is with the malfunction of that hippocampus. Smoking, nicotine is really bad. It constricts those blood vessels so that you get less blood flow to the brain. So that's just something to know. And then exercise, of course, is very good. It's the counterbalance to that. I've just loaded an app on my phone called 99 Walks, and I've set a goal for myself for the rest of the month. I loaded it 2 days ago to walk 22 miles and logged 22 miles this month, and I've logged 4.5. So I'm going away for a week's vacation next week with lots of hiking, and I'm going to set a goal for myself every month and make sure it makes it fun for me. It's gamification of a fitness goal. I get out with my dog, and it makes it more palatable for me to maybe take him on a longer walk than I normally would, because now I want to meet my goal and get my little badge or my little item for setting the goal. And because it's in my phone with GPS, it tracks the route that I walk. So when I say start my walk, it's drawing the map of my walk, and there's no cheating, right? Because it's tracking me. So I'm enjoying that and hoping that that'll be something that makes exercise fun for me, because I'll be honest with you, I don't love exercise. I don't find it fun. I find it usually boring and an imposition on my time, and not something that I'm a huge fan of doing, but I also know how important it is for me to do it, and to do it consistently for my heart and also for my brain. And I hope that you're all in places where you can exercise in ways that you can accommodate based on your physical health and your physical status. So things like chair yoga, if you have balance challenges, you want to look at those things that you can do that still will help bring your heart rate up in some way several times a week. Let's see, with that, there's a little list of reference materials here for you as well. And I'll go back to checking our chat here and see if we can field a couple of these questions. So yes, the first one here I see is on my Oura Ring. I did buy it and download an app. That's exactly what I did. And it charges. It's a device with sensors in it, so it has a little charger station. It only needs to be charged about every 4 or 5 days, though. It holds a charge for a long time. Does listening to an audiobook to fall asleep help or hinder? I don't know the science behind that answer, but I would feel like because you're transitioning to a different stage right before sleep, that would be very helpful for you, and would be almost analogous to reading that paper book as well. So again, as I say, I don't have the science on that one, but just logically, I know we're transitioning the brain to a different mode to do that, and I think that would be good. It would be a pre-relaxation mode. Is there a problem with getting too much sleep, either at night or napping during the day? There could be, could be a heart issue, circulation issue. So there's not a connection with Alzheimer's. In fact, with Alzheimer's, you actually end up not sleeping well, and people start wandering, and the brain isn't able to shut down as well with Alzheimer's. So I don't think there's a correlation there, but there could be a heart connection, and it would be something that if you or a loved one is worried about it, you would want to talk to your doctor for sure about it. Let's see. And then there were some great comments for one another on the flowers and the Play-Doh. Puzzles and Scrabble are good for your brain, but if that's all you do, then your brain gets autonomous about them as well, because you've nailed it and the brain nailed it and stored it. So change it up. If you like to play Scrabble, do some puzzles for a while. If you love to do puzzles, do some Scrabble, do some word game books or something different. It's really, the key is really changing it up and introducing different things to the brain. Taking on a new skill, doing what I did 5 years ago and going back to school and taking on a curriculum of study was really, really good for my brain. I can just tell, I can see the differences in my clarity of thinking and how I process information because of the enormous workload I had to get through to do a master's degree. So learning a language, you've probably heard this one, very, very good for the brain. If you always wanted piano and you never got to take it as a kid, think about it, right?
Yeah, Rhonda, after our first brainstorm, I had the idea to come up with, the learning a new language. It's kind of, it seems really daunting, right? To me, at my age or somebody else, at their age, and they might think, well, I'm not up to learning a new language. So what we did was we got a couple Zoom classes where you can just come and learn a couple words or a couple common phrases. And we did Spanish last week, and we had such a good time. And so the German one got postponed, but on the 30th at 2:00, you can join us and learn a few words and phrases in Italian. So join us for that one, because Marta and Carmen are going to be running it, and they're just a ton of fun. And that'll be a good way to use your brain, right, Judith? Right, Rhonda?
Yeah, oh, absolutely. And even just across languages, a fun thing to do. I've taken Spanish, and I lived in California for a lot of years where I heard Spanish spoken a lot. And I've taken some German. I've done a little bit of French. Learn to count, you know, in all three of those languages, or pick three. Learn the months of the year, the days of the week in all of the languages. You know, it's fun. I mean, especially whenever we've vacationed anywhere where Spanish is spoken extensively. We've been in Mexico with our kids, and we were sitting, I think, outside, I remember, at lunch one day, and a mariachi band came up, and they were playing, and I was nodding and clapping. And so they asked me if I wanted a fast song or a slow song in Spanish. And I responded that I'd prefer a slow song. And I didn't even realize that I could process that sentence or that question, right? But I could grab enough. I knew fast and slow. I grabbed the words, and I recognized that they were asking me the question. And that was a lot of fun. And then, of course, he rattled off a very fast string of Spanish, and I said, no, I can't speak it. Un poquito. And so, so doing something like that, you know, you could be a lot of fun too. Maybe even building out a chart that shows the days of the week in 2 or 3 languages, or that gives you the counts in 2 or 3 languages. Also fun with grandkids, right? And you're teaching them something that they will become interested in and potentially want to pick up as well. I have a bad habit of running long, and I see that I have run a little bit long with you all, but I want to thank you so much for your time today. It's been so much fun to spend time with you, and I can't wait till next month, and that's when you'll use the kazoos that were in the kits. We'll use them in the next lesson.
So next month is the power of sleep.
Yes.
And, you know, and it's funny because different people need different amounts of sleep. I happen to need like 8 or 9 hours of sleep. And you know, and my son, he only needed like 4 or 5. So,
wow.
You know, so I'm really excited to hear more about the power of sleep, Rhonda. So thank you so much for today. It was not only entertaining, but we learned a lot. So does anyone else have any questions they want to talk to Rhonda about? Okay, I think you did a great job. And I want to thank everyone for making the great decision to join us today. I'll have this on our OPC YouTube afterwards if you want to share it with friends and family. And we'll see you again next time.
Thank you so much, everybody. Have a great day.
Thank you,
My pleasure.
Rhonda.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Nicole. Thank you, Hap.
Yes, Nicole. Thank you.
Thank you to everyone. Thank you all. Thank you, Marianne.
Yes, thank you, Marianne.
OPC rocks.
All right. Love everybody. See you soon.
Bye-bye.
Bye.